Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined by Max Porterfield of Callinex Mines Incorporated. And it's good to see you again, sir. How's everything going with you?
It's going great. I'm really excited to be here today.
Yeah, we've all had a crazy week as the financial system sees obviously massive strain. Bank runs have taken the headlines, and it reminds a lot of us of why it's important to have wealth insurance like precious metals. Max, can you go into why, in a time of economic crisis like today, it's so important to be in precious metals like gold and silver? Because this is something that's been coming up a lot recently, obviously, with what we've been seeing in the news.
Well, I mean, for thousands of years, humans have turned to precious metals as a store and value of wealth, and I don't see that trend ending anytime soon. I think for a little while you saw cryptocurrencies and the growth of the crypto market as a alternative to the precious metals, but you can certainly see some weaknesses in utilizing cryptos. So again, it's another currency, another asset class that's non-correlated most of the time. I think in a really troubled market, all asset classes correlate for a short period of time, but certainly you want to have precious metals in your portfolio for diversification.
No, absolutely. And it's basically I've seen a trend a few times on Twitter recently: buy gold, buy silver. It's times like these that people really start to think about this kind of stuff and really think about how the financial system works as well. If zero interest rate policies help to create a booming tech industry and fueled growth and speculation, high interest rates are doing the opposite, and there's a rush to invest in resources, infrastructure, energy, and more. Do you see a change in behavior when it comes to the importance of natural resources since the inflation story became top of mind?
Well, I mean, I think all natural resources is an alternative asset class, and similar to real estate and or gold, the other natural resources are all priced in U.S. dollars, aside from obviously real estate's priced where it is in the local currency around the world. But in terms of that, it's going to perform well in an inflationary environment. It's going to take more dollars to buy the same metals per se. So that is the case for that. And then in addition to that, you've also had government policy on the flip side, on the demand side, really driving demand, particularly in the base metal space, as they've kind of mandated a shift away from the hydrocarbon oil and gas in favor of a zero carbon economy, and the metals are going to stand to benefit from that. So there's really twofold working for the metals right now, both from a kind of an alternative to a asset class, so that you don't get impacted by inflation that's going on so much, as well as just from the demand side in a very limited supply market, by a big shift for new demand coming online with EV vehicles around the world.
It's interesting. That is one of the things that would actually benefit in the case of this whole zero carbon thing, which obviously there's a lot of conversation to be had about that issue. But when it comes to like electronics, when it comes to a lot of the things that people use on a daily basis, most people don't realize the use case for gold and silver and a lot of those things. So, one of those things that would obviously benefit would be precious metals. Well, in recent weeks, we're hearing lots of chatter about dwindling supply of copper and zinc. And we know that because of the war, lots of materials are structurally coming out of circulation. Scarcity coupled with demand are usually a great sign for price action. What can you tell us about copper, zinc, or silver deficits?
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of on the flip side, we talked about the demand with the EV vehicles being a big demand driver. Actually, just going back to that real briefly, it's really similar to the platinum markets when the government's mandated that all cars needed catalytic converters. At that time, with platinum, you had very limited use outside of jewelry demand. Then all of a sudden, you have new demand coming online in a very big way, driven by government policy. Had a huge win for investors that were positioned correctly in platinum or had exposure to platinum in one way or another. Now, coming back to the supply side in the base metal space, you've had a lack of investment. And when I talk about investment in our business, it'd be exploration dollars being spent for the discovery of new copper or zinc mines, for example, to come online.
Yeah.
And on average, it takes 7 years from discovery to production in the copper space, for example, and that's assuming everything kind of goes okay. I mean, there are unique instances like here at Callinex where you can have an opportunity to fast track that. but typically there's very long lead times. So you've had a lack of investment over the past decade, and discoveries overall are getting more and more challenging to be made. For example, if you look at copper, they've been looking for copper for centuries, so it's not like a new use for a commodity or metal that didn't have really any kind of demand previously. So all these things are leading to a very, very limited supply. Then you add into the geopolitical risks taking place around the world, as you mentioned, the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. Russia, for example, is 4% of copper production globally. In the DRC and the Congo is where you're going to have some really, really rich, high-grade copper coming out of the Central Africa, very geopolitically unstable jurisdiction. Supply comes off quite easily there. And then really the bellwether of global copper supply throughout the years, it's kind of like the OPEC of copper is going to be in South America, in Peru and Chile. I've seen a lot of geopolitical unrest within those. You've had protests at mine sites that's brought a lot of production offline. So they're really the perfect storms brewing right now in the base metal supply space, where you have multiple demand drivers, one way or another, coming online. At the same time, you have really limited supply. That's just not, it's not oil and gas where suddenly you hit a new discovery and your path to production's substantially easier.
Right. Well, hey, as I always say to my viewers, there's always a way to play the markets in a crisis. Now, of course, none of this is investment advice, and I urge people to do all their own due diligence on all this kind of stuff, as always. But a lot of people ask for interviews with people who are doing something innovative in different spaces, and we like to take that challenge and listen to what people have to say on this, because a lot of our viewers like to invest, and it's kind of a scary market in a lot of ways these days. It's uncertain for sure. But with that said, there are the people that are pulling things out of the ground, and I think this is really interesting when we're dealing with a time in history where a lot of people are starting to look back at the things that ensured wealth in the past. There's a good reason to look at the companies that are actually pulling it out of the ground, and not just any companies that actually have projects and are actually doing something. And that's what I want to get into next with you. Callinex Mines, ticker symbol CLLXF, by the way. You are the CEO of the company for many years. Under your leadership, two big discoveries have been made. And when looking at the charts, I saw each time you announced a big one, shares rallied north of triple digits. What can you tell us about those two discoveries? And are you planning to drill again anytime soon?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've spent a considerable amount of time doing base metals exploration. Our technical team's been credited with numerous world-class discoveries in a really particular area of the world in northern Manitoba, where we're exploring. It's a tier 1 jurisdiction, being in Canada, and the model is always to do exploration in proximity to infrastructure, because that infrastructure has been put in place due to the pedigree of the geology in the surrounding area. So we've been exploring that area for a number of years with an excellent team. We hit our first discovery, Rainbow, in August 2020, and then subsequently we hit our second discovery called the Alchemist in early last year in 2022. And we've spent the past several years expanding the Rainbow discovery to a bona fide deposit. We're actually pending a maiden resource there. And what makes them unique is, outside from the location being in a tier 1 jurisdiction within close proximity to infrastructure, is they actually happen to be very, very high grades in terms of copper, and also carry gold, silver, and zinc as byproducts, which is quite unique. So they're polymetallic deposits. In terms of grades, on average, if you look at copper production around the world, it's less than 0.5% copper is what's mined. And again, Rainbow, for example, we're averaging between 3.75 to 4% copper. And if those grades hold true, and this transitions and we goes into a producing mine in the future as we see it, it will be one of the top 10 producing copper mines in the world, based upon the grades intersected to date. So that's kind of showing you in terms of grades. And then add into that, there's hydroelectric power within 200 meters of Rainbow, for example. So you have on-site, clean, low-cost power. And as policymakers are driving the zero carbon economy, the copper that's going to be, I think, most sought after is certainly going to be the cleanest copper. And that's going to be defined really by, what is the energy generation to mine the copper, and really the grades, because the higher grade, the less amount of volume we have got to move or to be mined, to be processed to get the same amount of metal out of the ground. And that's what we're on to with the discoveries in Canada at our Pine Bay project. And in terms of drilling, we're going to have drilling coming up in the very, very near future, which we're excited about. We just completed a $9.4 million financing not too long ago, within the past week and a half. And we're going to put those funds to work with continuing to expand Rainbow, Alchemist, and vector to new discoveries on the property in our 2023 exploration campaign.
Well, being from Manitoba, I've always heard it is world class for metals up there. And I wanted to go into this a little bit. Mackenzie Investments and Altius Resources both invested in Callinex. Those are very successful capital allocators and funds. What made them put $2.5 million into Callinex? And do you or your family also own shares?
Yeah, so in terms of Altius, Altius has a lot of experience within the camp. They're actually a royalty company. They have, through previous agreements, underlying royalty exposure to the discoveries. So I think, again, that's a good vote of confidence that they believe that they're carrying on with an equity investment into something that they foresee as potentially generating a royalty for them in the future. And then in terms of McKinsey's the number one performing natural resource fund over the past 10 years in Canada. They don't typically come into exploration stories like Callinex, so it's a big vote of confidence. They had followed the company for a number of years and really made their investment after they saw, Rainbow kind of emerge as a bona fide discovery, as I mentioned, with the step out drilling that we've done to date. It's pending now a maiden resource. And then we just added another, stable group of investors on the recent financing, and that's real key. In terms of the structure of the company, we have just over 17 million shares outstanding, and over half of those are held with their management and our close associates to management, like our families per se, as well as funds like McKinsey and Altius or resource capital funds. And in terms of myself, I am a very large shareholder of the company, as well as my family. This has been a long-term vision to make these discoveries that began in 2014. And we're very, very excited about where we are and most importantly, where we're headed going forward into the future.
Absolutely. And I have to remind people once again, this is not investment advice. Do your own due diligence. But when we're dealing with, uncertain times, the guys, again, that are pulling the things out of the ground that, people are using and historically have used as wealth insurance, this is important to look at. It's not like any other stock out there. I believe it's very different, and it is something that could actually very well prosper in the future versus the uncertainty of the market currently right now. And finally, I wanted to, for listeners, as many are interested in new ventures to get involved in, from your perspective, what are the two main reasons to own shares of Callinex, and what would you tell people that are wondering about that?
Well, I think that if you're going to play and make an investment or allocation in your portfolio to the natural resource space, the biggest bang for the buck, or where you can get the biggest return, is going to be on the exploration side of things. Exploration is what drives the largest rewards, and it comes with the risks associated with that. With Callinex, you're going to gaining exposure to new discoveries of very exceptionally high grade base metals in a safe tier one jurisdiction that has the amenities, you could call it, with the high grade the hydroelectric power line, existing infrastructure and workforce in close proximity, and it's all being driven by a team that's been credited with discoveries of some world-class mines before, and we're looking to obviously do that again with the current discoveries under the belt now.
Well, it all sounds really exciting going forward, and I wanted to ask you where people can find more information, and what's the ticker they should be looking for?
Yeah, certainly. You can find more information on our website at callinex.ca. That's CALLINEX.ca. Then also, if you'd like to purchase shares and you're located in the United States, we trade on the OTCQX under the ticker CLLXF, as well as in Canada, our primary listing on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the ticker CNX.
Well, I'm very excited to hear more about it as we continue. I've had you on the show before, and viewers were really pleased with the performance as well from there. I think I first had you on maybe 2 years ago or so, and you know, in these times, again, I've said it again. I sound like a broken record, but I do believe that this is an important time to consider, you know, projects, people involved in these mining projects. So I appreciate you coming on again to talk with us over at World Alternative Media, and we hope to talk with you again sometime soon.
Excellent. Thanks again for having me. I really appreciate the time and being able to be here today.
Check the links, everybody, in the description, and we'll see you next time.